Population. Who lives in this world you've built? Now that you've built your world, it's time to start getting down the details of who lives in it. Are they humans, aliens, mythical creatures, terrifying clowns? Please tell me it's not going to be terrifying clowns. Don't worry if this video seems to go too quickly to do the things I suggest. These are the questions you'll be asked in this week's writing quiz as well. This is just a preview with some explanation. First, what are the regular people in your world? Are they aliens, humans, magic-wielding gophers with 6 eyes? Give this species of beings a name and write a brief description of who they are and what they can do. Reminder, steer clear of copyrighted material such as hobbits or Klingons. Describe an average person from your protagonist's or antagonist's species. If this is a future human, focus on the things that will have changed: fashion, body modification, etc. If your species has a gender, note any differences in appearance that are tied to gender. Knowing and having written down the physical details of characters in your work will help you to be consistent when you describe your characters. Later, when you are writing your actual story, make adjustments to the entries in your world-building Bible to account for any changes and to add descriptions of individual characters. You don't want to forget how many eyes your protagonist has, or whether your antagonist is missing her right or her left ear. Don't forget to think about how naming works for your character's species ethnicity. In fact, naming conventions can be a quick and easy way to help readers recognize the species of a new character right off the bat. Think of Lord of the Rings. Elf names were dramatically different from, say, Hobbit names. Cultural events. All cultures have shared beliefs and significant moments. It can be as small as a wedding ceremony or as universal as a religious celebration like Christmas. What foods do they eat? Do they give gifts, and if so, what are they? What is the purpose of the event? What meaning does it have? Paying attention to the details of a culture is the way spec-fic writers bring these cultures to life. For instance, in Game of Thrones, George R.R. Martin often has pages and pages of the foods that were served at various feasts. In a short story, you have less space, but you still want to include that level of detail, just not in such abundance. Commerce. Does your species live in a post-money world like the denizens of Star Trek? Are they on a barter system like medieval peasants? Do they search for treasure and trade in gold, or work hard for credit to trade at space stations? How do they trade and acquire goods, and, if they have it, wealth? And what is the work they do to acquire that wealth? Remember that in any society where wealth is individually owned, there will be inequality, and that inequality will also be reflected in who has power. Pay attention to how wealth influences the available actions of your characters. But remember that not all societies are going to have variable wealth. This is particularly true if you are writing science fiction set in space. The crew of a spaceship would, in many but not all instances, have equal access to the resources of the ship, in part because such a ship would likely be purpose-built and include very few luxuries. Conflict. What current or historical conflict has shaped this species? Is it their fight against a hostile environment on a barren planet, a war against another species, infighting among a court of wizards and kings, the search for a cure to a disease which does or has threatened the entire population, the quest for wealth? All societies and cultures have at least some conflict. What is the one that helped to shape yours? Keep in mind that most conflict isn't martial. You don't need to have violence or grand battles in your work. The key conflict in your world might be environmental, governmental, interpersonal, interspecies, resource-based, or really almost anything people could fight over, for, or against. Shared values. Cultures share common values. These may be part of a shared or only partially shared religion, shared as a sense of civic duty, enmeshed in the way a magic system works, required to safely live in a technologically difficult place. It's probably a shared value on all space stations, never to risk accidentally breaching the hull, for instance. What shared values define good and bad among the people in your story? Very often, the conflict in a work is directly tied to the way characters do or don't accept a shared belief. For instance, if your world has experienced a global pandemic, but its population believes vaccines are harmful, at least part of your conflict is probably between those who know vaccines can be helpful and those who fear them. This is just a start to understanding the people who populate your imagined world, even if your imagined world is just New York in 2075. But it's a good start. I look forward to seeing how you answer these questions and to watching your worlds unfold.